Hi, Phil.
Hello, Andrew.
Thanks for joining me today. I've been asked to find a leader that I admire and see what I can learn from them. Um, Phil, I'm interested to hear what are the best practices you've picked up on over the years to effectively lead people?
I'd say probably the first and most important thing is honesty. Be
Okay.
honest about things. Don't don't try and blag your way through stuff. You know,
Okay.
people will see through you, and you'll have less respect from people if you try and get through something rather than just tell them you don't know. If you don't know
Mm,
the answer to something, just admit you don't know. You know, or go away and find out. People will
mm,
respect that.
sure.
Another thing I've found that works really well is to, I mean, this also kind of ties in, I think, with one of our later conversations, what questions I should say. But it's all about understanding people's skills, capabilities, what they enjoy doing and what they do well, and making the most of that whilst at the same time still giving people challenge and stretch and opportunity to develop. It's easy to fall into the pitfall of having a task and saying, okay, this person is the best person I want to do it. That's the person who always gets to do it.
Mm,
How do other people learn and develop? So making that balance of using the best people you've got to get things done, but ensuring that people also get the opportunity to develop and experience new things.
mm, great. So the first point sounds like, authenticity, really, like
Yeah,
an honesty, which is really good. And then the second one sounds like you're interested in taking an active role in people's development
and
and
again,
trying to
this is
achieve what,
kind of
you
it
know.
kind of rolls over into the conversation about how do you create and maintain a high performing team, but we can
Mm.
cover it now. So that
Yeah,
kind of
sure.
so certainly things that work for me is is having conversations with individuals to understand what their goals are, what their aspirations are, what things they are curious and inquisitive about, and also is there anything that is within the day-to-day remit of the team that they feel really isn't their thing, they really aren't comfortable with getting involved in. So I know, for example, as people, if people have aspirations to move up the organization, take more senior roles, there always comes that time when you end up probably doing less of the job and spending more time making sure the job gets done. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah.
So you move away from the actual doing of things to deploying the resources you've got at your availability to the best effect to make sure that things happen. You become more involved in, I don't know, stakeholder management, external profile of the team. Um,
Mm.
some people are quite happy dealing with people a lot more senior in the organization. Other people, that is quite a daunting prospect.
Mm.
Some people are happy to test themselves in that environment, and you can help people get there.
Mm.
How do you prepare? How do you deal with how do you deal with conflict, disagreement? Some people accept the fact that that is simply not where they want to be
Mm.
in their career, and you have to respect people's boundaries in that sense. That not everybody kind of wants to be where I am.
Mm.
People have different aspirations, different goals. So understanding what those are and helping people to develop and grow into what it is they want to be and not force them into something that you know is not something they're aiming to accomplish.
Mm. And presumably that's sort of mutually beneficial as well, isn't it? Because
Absolutely, that
you're,
goes.
you're
Yeah,
capturing what where they're at the moment, and then as they can grow and you can help them, that will probably help you in the long
very
run as
much
well.
so. So this again is this goes back to the point around giving people stretch and challenge, but knowing how far that stretch and challenge should go. So, if, like I say, if you have somebody who really, really does not want to be dealing with a particular facet of the work, then don't force them into that. The only consequence of that, of course, is that people have to understand that if they are fundamentally opposed to doing something, that could be impactful for them,
Mm.
at some point in the future. So, you know, to use our example, if you are really averse to dealing with people at a senior level, you're not confident about, standing up and talking in front of that kind of audience, to the extent that you're not going to do it, then, you have to understand that that has potentially going to put limits on what you can accomplish in the company. You
Mm.
can't reach senior levels without dealing with senior people.
Yeah. So I suppose having that kind of conversation with somebody that comes across as aspirational but might have these gaps or
Mm.
things could be quite a difficult conversation to
It can be,
manage.
indeed.
So I guess I'm wondering, how do you manage those difficult conversations? And I guess that's a kind of career growth driven one, but there could also be other ones on a personal level
Yeah,
or
I guess there's different aspects to it. So that certainly would be one aspect, and the approach to that would be, again, being honest about things. Um, you know, let's understand your aspirations. Let's understand what you need to exhibit to achieve that, where your gaps are, and are you prepared to do anything about it, or is there anything in there which is too big a gap for you to deal with?
Mm.
Um, Difficult conversations can take all forms, though. So
Mm.
there's stuff around disciplinary and behavioural stuff. There is, difficult conversations about organisational change, things like that. That can be a very difficult conversation to have with people. Um, Approaches to that, I guess, is, to the extent that it's possible, is to prepare yourself as much as you possibly can. If it's more of a kind of behavioural, disciplinary type conversation, have as much factual evidence at your disposal as you possibly can. So if you're going into a session to talk to somebody about their performance or their timekeeping or something else they've done, not for it to be based on anecdotes and he said, she said stuff.
Mm.
Lay out factual scenarios where you can say, well, let's talk about a time when this happened and that happened. I think as well, particularly on more like the disciplinary stuff, is if you start those conversations, being mindful and prepared for where that conversation could end up. So, for example, if you start out on a disciplinary journey, the ultimate conclusion of a disciplinary journey is dismissal, potentially. So, being aware of all that stuff. I think also, to the extent that you can be, exhibit some empathy, but also be prepared for the kind of reaction that you can get. So different people are going to respond to those kind of situations in very different ways. If from previous experience with individuals, you've got a sense of how they're likely to behave, you can be prepared for it. If not, then I think there are typically, give or take, there's half a dozen kind of typical responses from people to that kind of situation.
Mm.
Knowing what those could be and how best to react to those things. So, if somebody gets all emotional and bursts into tears, how do you deal with it?
Mm.
If somebody gets defensive, how do you deal with it?
Mm.
If somebody gets aggressive, how do you deal with it? What's your approach to dealing with potential different reactions people have the capability to exhibit?
Mm. Right. Thanks very much.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
great to speak to you, Phil.
And you.